Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call the July 27th, 2026 Crest Hill work session to order at 7:01 PM. For the record, I did receive messages from Alderman Albert and Alderman DeSario. They are unable to be here this evening. Moving along with the agenda under the mayor's report, I do have some very sad news to share with City Council. I was notified this afternoon by the family of Jeannie Jurisic, and unfortunately, she passed away yesterday evening. She's 94 years old. Great lady. We will do a moment of silence for her next week on August 3rd. I don't think these arrangements are set in stone. They're looking at a wake on Sunday and a funeral mass on Monday, but I don't think they're set in stone yet. So
Sunday?
this Saturday, this Sunday and next Monday.
August 1st. No.
So I ask that please keep her and the family in your prayers for the following week. She was a true, well-respected resident of the city of Crest Hill who was involved in a lot of different things. So that's all for me. For the city clerk, Chris,
I have
anything?
nothing to report tonight.
To our city treasurer, Jamie?
I have nothing to report tonight.
Okay, moving on to our city administrator, Blaine Wing. Blaine?
Good evening, Mayor and Council and elected officials and audience. I do have 5 items, and then I do want to note that we again are testing both the broadcast through our cable channels. So I guess if anybody is texting at home to check to see if the AT&T and Comcast are working, those should be, along with us also streaming this broadcast through our YouTube channel. The city also records the meeting so that we can test, but tonight this actually should be the live process actually in process. With that, the first item is the 2026 employee handbook updates. There's 2 parts. Tonight is part 1, which is in regards to the legal recommendations. Ashley, along with our labor attorney, Melissa, have been doing the heavy lifting here, so I'm going to hand it on over to Ashley.
Great. Well, thank you. We are placing a call to,
I first got to approve.
oh, sure.
Are you guys okay to place the attorney on, via phone?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Thank you. Bueno.
Hello, this is Melissa Wolf.
Hi, Melissa. My name is Christine Verche Holland, city clerk for the city of Crest Hill. We are in public meeting right now, so if you could please state your full name and for us.
Yes, this is Melissa Wolf. My last name is spelled W-O-L-F. I am the special labor attorney for the city of Crest Hill from the law firm of Storino, Romello, and Durkin.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, Melissa. This is Ashley. I am, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you. I can also see you on your YouTube channel, so
Oh, there
I'm
we
appreciative
go.
of that as well.
Hello. Well, I'm glad to hear it's working. We were wanting to check. Well, excellent. So this is our introduction to some updates for our employee handbook. This is, as Administrator Wing had said, the part 1 of our work session discussion items. We broke this manual up and the changes up into 2 parts, just based on some relatively straightforward recommendations for updates to legal, changes in laws and acts at the state and federal level. And so tonight's manual updates or recommendations as presented in the informational agenda packet, starting on page 3 is the memo, but then it goes from 5 to 34 in a chart. And We presented both the current text in each chapter that is currently in the manual, along with the proposed text and a proposed reason for the update. Tonight's presentation, I am not walking through all of these pages, but I'd like to highlight just the broad strokes of what the changes are in each of these sections. So you kind of have an overview, and then I would ask Attorney Wolf just to make any additional comments and we can answer questions. So just briefly, section 2, we're looking at changes to our definitions section. These, some of them needed grammatical changes, but we did add a couple of new definitions, things that are repeated over and over within the handbook, but didn't previously have a definition that could be helpful. It also removes duplicate content that might be covered elsewhere, or just based on changes in laws, the definition is not needed. Section 3, we talk about recruitment and employment. In this section and chapter, legal recommended adding references to our Equal Pay Act. We are updating our Equal Employment Opportunity Statement. It clarifies that position appointments are made in accordance with city ordinances. And we also define temporary employees. This section also talks about our dress code policy and then combines that section with other non-uniformed employees section to like a general policy on appearance. Section 4, we talk about hours of work and overtime. So the proposed changes, there's a couple of them, and they include clarification about how our employees are paid when it comes to longevity. We've had a couple of questions about how that happens. It also adds reference to our Illinois Wage Payment and Collection Act. Section 5 is about employee conduct. And so we took a couple of recommendations to our employee code of conduct, and it adds a procedure for external harassment reporting resources. Section 7, I skipped over section 6. Not all chapters in the handbook are looking at proposed recommendations. So that's the reason for me skipping. Section 7 is talking about our insurance and other employee benefits. And so this includes an addition of language related to our Illinois Transportation Benefits Program Act, which was an Illinois state law. Section 8 is regarding our holiday, vacation, and leaves of absence policies. And so some changes in here include adding provisions from a variety of our state of Illinois acts. There's an Illinois Child Extended Bereavement Leave Act, Blood and Organ Donation Leave Act. There are also amendments to the Pregnancy Discrimination Act as amended to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, and the Illinois Pregnancy Discrimination Law are added in here. It also talks about military leave, military honors, funeral leave. Sections of those codes have been repealed federally, and then the proposed language is the current procedures. And finally, Section 9 is updates to our safety and equipment use, and that clarifies our definitions related to city property and the storage of legal concealed firearms as well, and that's based on the Illinois Firearm Concealed Carry Act. So broadly, these are changes proposed as recommended by our legal attorneys. Melissa, do you have anything else that I would have missed?
That was a great job. Ashley, thank you so much for presenting that information. With respect to the proposed changes at this point, I would make a comment that a lot of these are some of them are non-discretionary in the sense that they're basically codifying within the employee handbook those statutory benefits that are required under the state law. So this is just updating the handbook so that we could be current with the benefits that the state of Illinois requires us to give city employees. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has regarding any revision.
Okay, any questions of Ashley or Melissa from City Council?
Yeah, I had one from, it's not on what's here, but I know looking through the employee handbook, I know we had some changes here with work hours and stuff with, the employees here at City Hall.
Okay.
When we were at the old City Hall.
Mhm.
And back then, it's under 4.2 workday.
Okay,
And it shows full-time employees generally will be scheduled for an 8.5-hour workday,
Mhm.
including a 60-minute lunch period.
Mhm.
And that no longer applies because they changed the hours, no longer working
Okay.
that long. So that should be changed to a 30-minute meal period.
okay,
And then
yes.
also, where's the other one I had? On 4.8 or 4.9 with overtime payment,
Mm-hmm,
under section B, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it says if an employee works 46 hours from Monday through Thursday, then takes a vacation on Friday, he will be paid 40 hours at straight time and 14 hours at time and a half for the 46 hours, then 8 hours of regular pay or, for the vacation time. Shouldn't that be 6 hours of overtime? Or how should that read? Am I reading it wrong or misinterpreting it?
I don't, it is one of the examples of language in this book that I believe we need to take a look at. I am also reading through some of these examples and just simply even a chart or something that could be a little bit better understood. There are a couple of complicated examples in the book. It's definitely something that was not required within this sort of overview, but is something that I will definitely note and when I come back to you in the next meeting or two.
All right, then another thing here with 4.8, going back to breaks and lunch periods.
Mhm.
And it says about the department head shall establish reasonable lunch periods and 2 break periods of not more than 15 minutes during the workday, and then arrange them in an appropriate manner for maintaining departmental operations. It goes on to say, upon approval from the department heads, employees may combine their break periods with their lunch periods.
Mhm.
Employees shall not shorten the workday by using the break period or lunch period. But, I think we might run into a problem with where someone might take their break at 10 and then later on
Mhm.
extend their lunch, go 15 minutes prior to their lunch and then clock out, or get done clocking out from lunch and then take a break and then later on
Mhm.
take another. Who's monitoring that? Or,
Okay.
I think to add that together can cause some problems.
Okay. Yeah, this is something that we can definitely address. And, I envision the time that I come back to you with a couple of other administrative and kind of operational sorts of policy cleanup. It's one of those things that we can discuss.
Okay, then another one I had was on with the 7-minute rule
Mhm.
for, clocking
Yeah,
in later.
The
Then
rounding.
is
Mhm.
that pretty much standard with all municipalities that they get 7 minutes of extra time to clock in or to show up late?
It has been general practice that for timekeeping purposes, 7 minutes is common to what I know. I don't know, Melissa, do you have any sense of the timekeeping rules as it applies to labor, labor
Yeah,
payment laws?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. The reason why that 7-minute duration is there is because the labor board has identified a period of time which was short enough to make it definitive as to whether the employee should be compensated or not. So that 7 minutes was that threshold period of time.
I was just curious because I've never seen that long a time
Mhm.
anywhere else in any place I've ever worked. 3 is the most. A lot of jobs, if you were there 1 minute late, you were late 1 minute,
Mhm.
so that's why I'm asking that 7 minutes. Is that a, standard? Is that,
Yeah, it definitely, just from a practical standpoint too, of an accounting and other sorts of payroll efficiencies, it's typical for, overtime or other types of payment are commonly paid in 15-minute increments. And so it is a responsibility of the supervisor to take a look at the timesheets and make sure that whatever operations is dictating, or whatever they're observing as a clock in, clock out, whatever those patterns are addressed effectively.
Because I would hope that, we don't have someone who's, constantly
Yeah.
every day, because that's quite a bit of time.
Yeah,
7 minutes, that's.
you don't
add
want
up
it.
on
Over half.
time,
Exactly.
That's over a half hour a week.
Understood.
So what is the policy on clocking in? Are employees not expected to clock in at the time that their shift starts? For example, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock?
Yeah, I know that there's an official start time to personnel's clocking in, clocking out, just as the expectation that you finished your work and you should be leaving at the end of your shift, and you're not dragging it out so you accrue overtime. We would also have the same expectation that people aren't clocking in terribly early. The allowance by the law is up to 7 minutes early, but you don't want somebody showing up a half hour early just because they feel like it. It's a sufficient amount of time to kind of get organized or put your stuff in a refrigerator or something like that and go to your desk. I'm not observing it on a regular basis, but from an operational standpoint, that's what I would hope is occurring. That
I'm
it's
not-
reasonable.
Right. Thank you for that. I'm not too concerned about people clocking in too early.
Sure.
I'm more concerned with them clocking in late and not being considered late.
Yeah.
And that's, I understand the 7-minute rule,
Yeah.
especially for overtime. If you punch out at like 5:05, there's no overtime. It's after 7 minutes, but it's the punching in at your expected start time.
Yeah. Again, that falls to supervisory level, I believe. If there are people that are unprepared upon the start of their workday, then they should be addressing that. Something happens and you get stuck at the traffic light out here or something, and you come in a minute late. But generally, again, we're open for business at 8 o'clock in the morning. I know Public Works is busy and raring to go by 7 o'clock. So if it needs to be addressed by an individual, we should be doing that.
But
And if I could.
I agree with you, but I also think that there should be a policy for all employees on expected start time and not have it left to the discretion of a department head. One department head may think 2 minutes after is late, where another one may say, well, you were 5 minutes late, but you're allowed up to 7. I think that should be something that's more standardized in a policy form.
Okay.
Yes, and if I could just add, the purpose of these regulations here are exactly what this council is discussing, in that it's supposed to regulate when overtime is to be incurred. So it's to dictate, when employees can come in early or leave late, so that the city does not incur any additional overtime. And it also identifies the rounding mechanism that's going to be used by the city. It certainly is not a regulation that diminishes the requirement of the work start and end times. That is stated in the paragraph in there, and that employees that are scheduled to work at a certain time have to be there ready to work at that time. But it definitely could be language that's emphasized, so that there's, this doesn't diminish the authority of the city or its supervisors to implement the start times or work time of the employees.
But shouldn't we have something in there to state that if on a regular basis, like for an employee, so many days or so many weeks where even if they're clocking in 5 minutes after they stay out 7 minutes, that, to me seems abusive. There should be something in there after so many days or something that, there has to be some kind of counseling or talk and if it continues, then maybe, there's got to be some kind of discipline because otherwise someone could come into work every day 5 minutes late and they're eating up how much time and they're getting paid starting at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, that's something that could be addressed, and tardiness is something that's in the disciplinary components of, or the code of conduct components of the policy elsewhere. But we can certainly look at, like I said, emphasizing that this clocking in procedure doesn't negate the work requirements of the employee, and that if they are abusive of it and continue to clock in late, the disciplinary procedures can be implemented.
Couldn't that also apply to like not just clocking in, at the start of the day, but also, clocking in or clocking out after lunch? Would that count too? Because they got that
Yeah,
7 minute, is that
absolutely.
7 minute window there for lunch also?
Yeah, Alderman Dyke, the section 5.2 is our employee code of conduct. It is included in your information tonight, closer to page 20 in the packet. There's a bullet point that says overstaying scheduled rest or lunch periods or taking excessive breaks was added as a recommendation. And we could also add a specific note about clocking in and out late, for the end of start of the day. I mean, certainly that would be a general policy and an expectation of people to start and end on time, but the other addition would go well with that. We could certainly add that.
So that they don't clock out when they go to a break and they come back?
Well, it really depends on the employee's position too, and the timekeeping that we have. We have different systems that different departments use and have access to currently. So some of our employees are using punch cards, some of are using our online timekeeping system. Some of them are salaried exempt employees. So it all kind of depends on.
Well, the salary, we know that
Yeah.
you don't have the ability because you work
Correct.
extra in meetings and
Right.
actually you work a lot of hours that you're not paid for if you
Right.
want to look at it like that. But to me, in every job that I've seen, you clock when you come into work, you clock out when you go to a
Mhm.
break.
Yep.
When you come back from break, you clock in. And we should have one system. You just stated that some they use punch cards, some they use whatever
Yeah.
extra time.
We're
It should
working-
not be those options. It should be one option to everybody.
Yeah.
And
We're-
why is not that?
It's based on our technology. We're actually working through trying to identify a system that's going to do that for us.
So our technology is not working for everybody?
What, I'm sorry?
You're saying our technology
Yeah.
doesn't work for certain
Um,
employees?
There are some departments that are on the online clock-in system. There are some that are using online punch systems. And then the police department have a different system.
But we're
that
talking
is also
about this
online.
about this side right now. We haven't gone to the police. Why
Yeah.
why we're not all on the same system is the question.
So I'll be very specific. Public Works is using paper punch and a manual process. There are others at City Hall. We're all on this other online system, and then police have their own system. So we're in discussion as to how to bring everybody into one, grouping and system.
It should be one policy to everybody.
Yeah,
We don't
so-
pick and choose.
Yeah, so policies are one thing.
Policy.
The software, the city implemented about 8 years ago, a software called Cassell. And that system doesn't have time clocks that are over at Public Works. So what Ashley's talking about is they're still using the manual time clocks and then entering in that data. So if somebody clocked in at 6:59 and the next person clocked in, punched their ticket, if you will, their time ticket, that is different than a digital one that is able to be done on the software here in this building. The
I thought
policy is
last
the
year we
same.
implemented a software for people to clock in and out from their phones.
Yep. So the finance department is geofencing certain departments and has been rolling that out. So City Hall has been completed. Public Works, we don't have the technology to implement and change out currently the time clocks from the paper-based ones to the digital system.
See, to me, then everybody should be doing paper until we get a software that will go through every department the same way. That's
So,
to me.
yeah,
That's
so-
how it should be. Then you get a software that works for everybody. You don't say, okay, your department, you gotta do it paper, you gotta do it. That doesn't make sense.
Well, unfortunately, 8 years ago, the finance department and council authorized City Hall first, and we haven't gotten to Public Works. We're coming to the end of our contract with our current vendor, which ends at the end of February of next year. So that's why finance and HR are actually looking at one that goes across. The investment was not made 8 years ago to have those digital time clocks at each of the Public Works locations. And so that's why they're still using the manual time clocks. It doesn't make sense to place digital time clocks that are going to work with an outdated system. And that's why we're looking at getting all of the employees from all the departments onto one system. And that component also would be able to address the police, because that same vendor happens to also have one for other municipality employees. So police are on a typically, they're running 24/7. Public Works, could have various shifts. And then there's the standard 8-hour shifts. So there are software vendors that can handle all of them. There are only a few that actually can handle the public safety, police, and fire quite well. The police department is quite pleased and satisfied with that vendor. And so that's why I know HR and finance have been looking at that vendor to also be the vendor that does our other employees.
My question with the online, as far as clocking in online, how is that online done? Is it done on a computer that's here in the building, or is it with their phone? How are they clocking in then online?
Yeah, so for the majority of the employees, my understanding is they would be clocking physically in on their desk computer. So they would sit down at their workstation, log into their computer and log in. I know the finance department has been looking at the geofencing, because there are certain employees that to get from where they actually are going to be doing their work is maybe at a different location. So I know they've tested that, but I'm not aware that that's actually is in progress. What Ashley was noting earlier is that's the geofencing. So if we have a specific site that they're going to, they would have to be within the parameters in that site.
Well, my only concern with using their phone for an example is I could get here at, say, right at 7 minutes after I'm in the parking lot, and they'll pick me up in the parking lot. Then it's going to take me after I close my car, lock it up, get my whatever I need for that day, my lunch and whatever, make it into the building, get to my workstation or whatever it is. It's already another 3 minutes or whatever.
Mhm.
So, to say that's right, that isn't. I see
Yeah.
chances of abuse with that.
Yeah.
I'm not aware that that is being utilized. I know with our current software that was being tested to see. The main reason it was being used or tested was so that if it did go over to Public Works, we have individuals that might be going to a water station. So instead of having first go to the main administration building to clock in and then drive over to the other one, they would be able to directly go to that water treatment or the sewer treatment plant and basically be able to be logged in.
So they would be able to log in there then? it would
Yeah,
show
if
them
there's a
from that
workstation.
location
Correct.
with
Yeah.
GIS or whatever.
Yeah, the GPS coordinates, so it's basically geofence. We could have it where it's literally in the building so that you're not in a parking lot. You're not, so there's all kinds of ways that these systems have gotten away from, a buddy punching. So back in the day, somebody had a paper card, your buddy behind you knew that you were running late, so you punched their card. So there's all sorts of methods that in the past
Right,
that were done.
exactly.
And
But
so,
if you have like a time
Yeah,
badge,
so-
your own badge,
Yeah.
it's got its own code. So, someone can't hit exactly, and
Correct.
you use that to clock in. No one's going to have your badge to use it to.
right.
Sure.
In addition, when individuals are logging in, we're tracking the login, so we're getting that recorded as well as now that they're into the system. I'm not sure how extensive you guys want to get into this, but there's also then somebody who forgot to log in. And so then supervisors have to, manually override and go into the system. We look at our video and can say, oh, they walked in at 7:01. So I'm going to say when they sat down at their desk, it was 7:01. And when they left, because now when they checked out for lunch, they actually signed in instead of signing out. So now that time is actually at 12:02 when they actually signed out to go out to lunch. That the computer system just showed them, oops, they logged in. So those sort of things have to get worked out. And again, the department, the supervisors work through that. Once we have a newer system that goes across all of the departments, I know the finance department and HR plan on presenting that later on this fall to council. Here are 2 or 3 different vendors and here are the costs for those. To bring us to that next step. Again, 8 years ago, the investment was to digitize really our main staff here. And we did not get to the public works with the non-paper-based system.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I have a question. The 7 minutes, would employees be required to work 7 minutes after the shift end to make up for the late? Or is the 7 minutes paid based on contract language, or we're just giving them 7 minutes grace?
So Melissa, you might want to answer this with
Yeah.
the Department of Labor and how that's 7 minutes, because I think there's some confusion.
Well, with respect to the 7 minutes is the threshold amount of time that the labor board has determined is non-compensable. So if you're or compensable within that 7 minutes, doesn't implicate the obligation of the employer to pay overtime. So if someone left within 7 minutes of the end of their shift, it can be rounded down to the leaving at, say the 5 p.m. is the end of their shift. If they left at 5:05, the clocking system cannot, is allowed to not compensate them for that 5-minute period of time. And 7 minutes is the threshold that's been determined by the labor board for that. Whether, this clocking in and clocking out procedure doesn't dictate the direction that the supervisors would make to the employees to stay 7 minutes later. What this is doing, this requires that employees clock in and clock out. So all their time is recorded and recorded accurately. And what it precludes starting too early so that the city doesn't pay an employee just for coming in 15 minutes early every day and rack up that overtime. So that's the point of this policy. That 7 minutes is a threshold that's been determined by the labor board as, discretionary non-compensable time. The city may implement these, according to this procedure, the practice of rounding down or rounding to the nearest hour of that time if it is within that threshold. So, these more digitized time clocks probably will allow employees to be paid on the minute, but what this is supposed to prevent or guide employees to coming in not too early and not staying late, and letting them know that, this is the rule and they're not to do that. But They are still dictated, they are still required to work their work hours. Whether a supervisor would make someone come or stay 7 minutes later to make up the time, really, the recommendation would be at that point is if the employee repeatedly does that kind of behavior by coming in 7 minutes late, the appropriate remedy is not having them make up that 6 or 7 minutes of time at the end of the day, but to actually start to implement discipline for their failure to follow the policies to get to work on time.
Okay. Now, what if that employee works overtime? So the overtime would begin 7 minutes after the shift end, or at the time the shift end?
No, that's a good question. If someone is approved overtime, their overtime would commence at the end of their shift. And overtime is implicated once they work over 40 hours in a work week. So depending on how many hours they worked in that week, now employees are always paid for their time worked, but whether time and a half is implicated is dependent on whether 40 hours or more have been worked, or over have been worked. So, but the implication of that calculation starts at the very end of their shift. So it doesn't, that 7 minute rule doesn't come into play when you're looking as to whether someone has worked approved overtime.
Okay. Now, I got two more questions. One is, do we have a policy that an employee is not allowed to start prior to their shift unless it's approved by their department head or supervisor? Because what I'm hearing is they can randomly come in and start early at their own discretion.
Well, it's not at their own discretion. This specific policy actually is the policy that you're asking about. So this is putting the parameters that they can't come in early and they have to get approved. So they would have to get approved to come in early and they would have to get approved to work more, which would cause overtime.
Okay. And my last question goes back to what Alderman Dyke was reading about the overtime, where six hours of overtime turned into 14.
Right.
So
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
overtime paid at double time or at time and a half? Because I just heard the attorney speak about time and a half.
It depends by contract too. So sometimes there's a double time requirement if it's, a holiday or something like that, but typically it's time and a half.
Right, I understand the premium language, but I mean, what he read in the handbook about 6 hours overtime turning into 14 hours pay.
Yeah.
Kind of confusing.
I agree. I'm going to come back to you guys with an improved example.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that example that was being referred to, and I do agree that clarification would certainly be beneficial. But I think the point of that is to illustrate that when someone takes a vacation day, those hours do not count as triggering hours worked for calculation of overtime. So that's the reason why that provision was saying if an employee works 16 hours and then has a scheduled vacation. I mean, again, it is a confusing example, but I think these examples are clarifying what counts as time worked when calculating overtime. Because under the FLSA, time off, such as vacation, even though it's paid time, is not legally required to count as hours worked to implicate overtime on the employer.
Right, it's not earned income. Right, and lastly, it's just a statement. We was talking about the geofencing and public works. If the guys have a call out, let's say a water main break, and they're on, and they leaving their home and going straight to the water main break, how do we clock them in with geofencing at that point?
So currently we don't because we don't have a electronic system. So in essence, they are per contract given 2 hours of a minimum to be working. So if they go out and a crew of 3 individuals go out to the site, they're basically, when they're now there on the site, they're guaranteed the 2 hours. So it's not like they're driving their car and they live an hour and a half away, that, the first hour and a half is there. Once they're now on the site, they get the minimum of 2 hours as they're doing their work per their contract. So if they're there for an hour or if they're there for 4, they're going to be way over the 2-hour minimum to work that site.
Okay, so on call out, they're not paid for travel.
Yeah, so they're on, so if they're already worked their 8 hours, it's if they're getting close to the 40 hours, they could be earning overtime. So there's multiple things, but as they start to work, they're driving right to the site. They might have to drive to get a truck or equipment or other things. That's when they start. They are guaranteed, though, the minimum of the 2 hours based on their contract.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question to that, though. So what you're saying is that there is no actual, on a call out, like his example, there's no actual punching in or punching out on a call in after hours in that situation where they go directly to a site.
Correct.
So it's the honor system.
Well, no, it's so once they get to the Public Works building, they're basically punching in. So they're not punching in from home because we don't have a geofence. They're not driving their car. They're going to the site. They pick up their vehicle or they get the equipment or basically getting on their uniform and their stuff.
So they would be going to the Public Works building.
Or they could be going to a water. So each of
Or
the
a well.
the sewer treatment, the water, the wells, they have currently a paper-based system that they would be punching in.
So all those Public Works sites have punch-in capabilities.
Well, I wouldn't say the main buildings do. So you could go to a well house. So we have 36 different Public Works buildings. Some are basically the size of a small closet. So those do not have the capabilities. With the newer systems, we'll have the geofence. So if they just happen to know that they got an alarm saying that well house number 8 has an issue and they drive right there, I guess if you're asking, are we taking their word? Potentially, if they drove right there to see what the alerts are, but we'll know because we'll see that the alarm is triggered. They've logged in to get in. They've used their keys and they've gotten into the building to access the system. So there's ways to say, like, if they put down, I got there at 7:59. Well, we look at it and you see the video, and they got there, at 8:12. Well, then there's a 15-minute discrepancy. So there's not necessarily, we don't have the geofencing for those sort of instances, but there are ways for us to verify.
Someone's phone. I have a question. So this is the first part of
Yes.
the handbook.
Yes.
Is the part that we discuss, you and I, and also I think Chris, about changing schedule without
Yeah.
council approval, is that coming in the second part, or this is gonna be
Yes.
the part of it?
Yes. So
So it will be included about,
yes, I am planning on
and is the
bringing it
attorney
for
is aware of
discussion.
it on the phone? She knows?
Yeah,
Have you
we've
talked to her
had-
about it?
We've had a variety of discussions about all the things that we've kind of noted. So it should be something that we'll have coming forward.
Like how soon? Because it's not fair for the rest of the employee that they're sitting and watching other employee taking the time, change their schedule as they feel like it. And others, they have to follow the city hours.
I believe we're talking about coming in August
Yeah.
for the second part of this. It's not going to be months. It's going to be next month.
Okay, because this has been going on now. You've been here almost 6 months, and I've brought it to Blaine a month prior, so it's been 7 months
Okay.
that certain employees have made that complaint, that they feel left out, that they're not included in changing hours, like they feel if they want to come at 7, just like other employees in here,
Mhm.
or leave at 3:30, they have to follow the city hours. So I think all the staff should be treated equally.
I'm confused, Claudia, because I thought that we set certain hours.
Yes, we did it.
And everybody was supposed to. I
Correct.
believe the verbiage was everybody would be on those hours.
From 8 to 4:30.
Yeah. How did we vary from that without the councils changing that? I'm a little
Yep.
curious.
So council also, the next sentence is that council
Yeah.
gives the directors the variance of an hour one way or the other. So that those directors, each director, based on what council.
But
Yep.
the language that you said before, and Darrell, you work with the union, you know about these policies. This particular phrase, that's only if the city decide, an example, back in the day, we used to have stickers for the cars. We used to get stickers,
Vehicles.
vehicle stickers. And an example, the clerk will want her staff to work extra hours that night. That covers that. That's not for a supervisor or a city administrator or for anyone to say, you know what, yeah, you can go ahead and change your schedule. That doesn't work like that. And that's for the union. Now, there's certain employees that they're not union and they're still doing that.
Well, I
So
think,
maybe the attorney needs to look into that phrase right there, or whatever you want to keep, that statement in the employee handbook or in the contract, union contract.
so I think the labor attorney plans to be present for the discussion with the actual policies and those language. I think in consultation with Ashley, Melissa basically, was okay addressing state and federal changes to the law because the city, basically, we have to follow those remotely. So there's a very large book, again, as we don't have contracts with all of our employees. We're about 85% unionized. So there's about 13, 15 non-union employees that do follow our employee handbook. However, if the union contracts don't state certain things, that's why we have the handbook as well, so that we.
Well, see, to me, if you're gonna make changes, then staff, they need to wait and those changes take some place. Because if your handbook or your contract language states that, you don't break that just because your supervisor or because you feel like to do it, and then we're gonna wait, 9 months to figure out how we're gonna include the other staff, or we're gonna change the city hours again, or that's what I don't like, is when we pick and choose. And then when staff comes to the council and they feel neglected or they feel not being part of it, I personally have an issue with that because I'm very vocal about how we should treat everybody equally.
Yeah, so the challenging part with that is each contract has a different expiration date. And typically, my experience is being an HR director in several communities and also being an assistant that's overseen, that we normally update the personnel handbook annually, and contracts are typically 3 to 5 years. So if we waited for each one of those rounds to all occur, we technically would be in violation of the law sometimes when a law passes and says we need to follow it. So with our personnel handbook, that's why the standard practice is once a year that we look at it. Unfortunately, with our previous interim, that task wasn't completed. Previous interim HR staff, along with our previous labor firm. Since Ashley's been here in March, I've directed her along with our new labor attorney. So I know there was, already noted that there's a few months, but we needed to get all the individuals in place so that they could start looking at the personnel. We do have one contract, which is the local 150 that has expired, that we're actually operating underneath. And then we have 2 police ones that are set to expire this upcoming year. So the goal would be to update our personnel manual as soon as possible, still this year, get our negotiations underway with the local 150, and then we'll be starting with the police union. So there's not we can get everything all at the same time. There needs to be a strategy that's kind of a rolling clock, if you will.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I don't understand that. So basically, you're saying that the rest of the employees in this building, local 150 or exempt employee, they cannot change those hours because these particular group, they're okay with that. Those are allowed, their contract or their whatever negotiation that they had, they're allowed to do that, but the rest employee, what is that stat? I would like to see a copy of that.
Sure. So I'll give an example. So if Local 150 that has several employees that are here in the finance department, there's 4 out of the 5 are unionized. If they negotiated certain hours to say that they're going to work from 8 o'clock until 4:30, and are non-union through our personnel, so we have the director and then there's a supervisor, if we've set our hours to say 7:30 till 4:30, then you have one group, which is the union one, that negotiated that set of hours. And then you have another group, which is the non-union, that quite honestly, the city council at any time could be updating our personnel manual and changing those hours.
So you have a union at the clerk, you have 2, well now one of them got promoted a couple weeks ago. So, but you had 2 employees that they're union at the building department.
Yep.
So are you saying those were not included part of 150?
So the union are, and there's also additional employees in the police department, and there's also ones over at Public Works as well. So those employees, when we negotiate the hours, they have in the contract spelled out the times, and that has been set in the current 3-year, which is now an expired contract. So it freezes in place the terms that the city council and that the union agreed to.
And just to add to that, with respect, just to have some additional clarification, with respect to hours that are dictated specifically in a collective bargaining agreement, the city council is precluded from unilaterally changing those terms and conditions of those union employees. That is something that has to be directly negotiated with the union. So if there was a provision in the handbook that changed, that policy provision can be implemented to those non-union employees without any delay. But with respect to any union employee, if those conditions are in that collective bargaining agreement, that collective bargaining agreement has to control. And the only way to change that is through the collective bargaining negotiation process. We can't change that through the employee handbook here.
I understand, but isn't it, Ms. Walsh, that the union contract goes to everybody in Local 150? I'm not talking about police. I'm talking about administration on the site. Isn't it all employees fall under that?
All employees that are within that collective bargaining unit,
Exactly.
not all employees. Yes.
Exactly. So certain employees, they are not given this opportunity.
Are you saying certain employees are outside of that collective bargaining unit?
Yeah, their hours are not changed. They were only given to the finance water department only.
Yeah, so she's a non-union employee versus the union employees. So again, as Melissa was just stating, there's 2 different groups here. So there's the union that negotiated through a collective bargaining agreement, and that's what council has locked in a 3-year contract, which is now since expired, and we're in the process of going through the negotiation. That would be the appropriate time if we wanted to change and have that flexibility that is currently in the employee handbook. Now, it could be the city's policy to adjust the handbook to actually make it more strict, and so then they would be similar. But that is pointing out a difference between non-union employees and union employees.
I totally understand that. I'm talking about the union employee. Are they all fall under the same policy?
Yes and no. So that's why we can't give you an easy
So
answer.
I was saying, so Chris, your employee then doesn't fall under that, correct? Chris?
One,
Well, the other one is she's a deputy, so she's exempt. What about Linda?
she is union.
Okay, so she should fall under that.
Yeah, so under our current contract, each division states certain things. So you can have a division that is covering the administrative staff for the clerk's office, and it could be different than the building hours. So we could actually have, under the same contract, different hours worked for different departments. So there can be differences. The union can ask for those differences. What Melissa's noting is through the negotiation processes where either the city could ask for or the union could ask.
I understand that we can ask for, but right now, currently, I'm talking about currently right now,
Yes.
everybody has the same contract.
Well, it's the same contract. However, there are some different terms underneath that current contract.
I would like to
I'd be
see
happy
that.
to sit down with you or Ashley
Mhm.
and to go under specifics. Again, these contracts are, over a couple hundred pages, and to go through the details, walk through examples.
So since there's an employee that is not union in that particular department and able to change their hours, so that means the other employee that they want to change their hours, that they're not union, they should be able to do the same thing, correct?
If they're two non-union employees, they would
Correct.
talk with their supervisors, yes, with the flexibility that
So
we
go ahead,
currently have.
Chris, you can change your hours.
Are you done?
Yeah.
I just want to clarify and make sure I'm understanding this right, is that under CBA language, shifts, hours of work are in there for different groups. Therefore, they can't be changed by the city because it's a bargained item within the time of the contract.
Yes, so the time that it could change is during negotiations. Either side can discuss that. Typically, we ask for some language, some flexibility. The cities do, in my past experience, so they can be adjusted. Sometimes and I believe in our current contract, we have that. We could go from potentially an 8-hour shift to a 10-hour shift or a 12-hour shift. So typically, I don't want to just say definitively it's locked, because typically contracts have that language that we can adjust the time.
The city could adjust to fit operational need is
Correct.
probably the
Correct.
general term
Yes.
used. And for example, I think most everybody works Monday through Friday,
That's the typical
which I always
schedule.
had kind of a question about, is why, this city business that should be taking place doesn't only happen Monday through Friday. For example, a lot of code enforcement violation stuff happens on the weekend because contractors and folks know that the city's closed.
Yeah.
So or public works, they're closed, which always had a kind of a concern about not having coverage for certain things on the weekends. Would we be able to adjust an employee's schedule to work, for example, Tuesday through Saturday and have them off Sunday and Monday?
We could negotiate that.
It would have to be negotiated, but
Correct.
that doesn't fall into the city's ability to change schedules to fit operational needs.
Correct. So right now we're, I guess, with the local 150, and Melissa, correct me. Right now, as we're past our current contract expired, we can't be changing the terms or conditions of the agreement. They're basically locked. Through negotiations, we'd be able to. There are a few provisions that, so if the city declares an emergency, so if this is wintertime and we declare a snow emergency, we're going to get 20 inches of snow. There are some abilities to do that. But typically, we're not saying, all right, we're now going to go from a Monday through Friday and now going to do a Tuesday through Saturday. I will say that, our Public Works and Director and Ashley have been already working on employees such as our janitorial staff to actually work different hours so that we actually are having a greater coverage. When I've worked in other communities like Des Plaines, I did have weekend work, so I did have varying schedules negotiated with the unions. I even had second and third shifts for some of the union employees as well.
Mm-hmm.
So at the table is where those discussions would need to be had.
But I'll just clarify that it definitely, what Blaine is saying is absolutely true about bargaining unit employees. We do have some employees that are not part of the union. And so, for instance, like a janitorial position, we do have the ability to set a schedule if it's mutually agreed upon. So, but it's very few of our positions that are in those circumstances. And typically you do that in a limited circumstance. Like you said, if there's a code enforcement action that we wanted to take and we said, this one Saturday, we're going to do that and send someone out, then we would agree upon what those work hours were for that week. We wouldn't have to necessarily, make that an overtime shift because they'd work Monday to Saturday. There potentially could be flexibility, but we could not do that with the union employees.
Yeah, and again, to Ashley's point, for the non-union employees, we have a greater flexibility.
Sure.
So we could flex, let's say, the clerk staff to work on, or even finance staff. Again, I happen to be a resident here in town when we did have the vehicle stickers, and I remember actually those going in the vehicles back in 2000. So, we might want to have Saturdays, and when we have certain times, there might be, half days or full days that we might want to flex staff and maybe even ask them not to come in on that Monday and actually work on a Saturday instead. So there's greater flexibility with our non-union employees to even having a set schedule that could be a Tuesday through Saturday, normally set. The challenge with that sometimes is not having the supervision. So you might not have a full-time supervisor over an employee that's coming in to do some work. So that can be a challenge as well. So there's other obstacles when we look at having a varied schedule, that we want to make sure that we have the supervision, also accidents and injuries and other things in case there's a medical emergency, an accident, and those sort of things as well.
Can you put an example for you so maybe I can understand that better?
Sure.
So let's assume Tina works finance and water. I work at the clerk and Darrell works at the building department, and we're all exempt employee. And our hours of operation is 8 to 4:30. Tina decides she wants to work from 7 to 3:30, and she was allowed to do that. Can Darrell and I do the same thing?
So in your scenario, is everybody, I guess, non-union employees or?
We're exempt, right? We're not non-union, correct? We're not non-union.
Okay, so I guess exempt is normally if you're hourly or your salary is the exempt and non-exempt portion. So I want to make sure we're using the right terms and that I understand.
We clock in and out.
So you're hourly employees.
We're hourly employees,
And you are all non-union employees.
correct?
Okay, so, and you have different supervisors in this instance. There would be Glenn would be over the finance, Dan would be over the building department, and I'm
And
sorry.
unfortunately, Chris will be my boss, yeah.
And Chris is over the clerk. So the clerk is over the clerk's department. So yes. So each of those directors within the current language that we have that ability, I believe, an hour one way or the other to adjust. So either the director could talk to that employee or the employee could talk with their director to say, for this instance, I'm working on this project. I would like to either stay and
No,
work
I'm
or-
talking like every week we get to make our own schedule the way it's happening right now. So we can all take on the same time from 7 to 3:30 because we have different supervisors, and supervisor not going to be calling, hey, you're going to have employee working. Let's assume, do I have the same right as Tina? Does Darrell has the same right as Tina?
Would all three of you have the right to ask? Yes.
No, well, everyone have the right to ask questions or ask for something. Do we all have the rights to change our schedule?
No, the employee cannot change your schedule. The supervisor would have to change the schedule.
Claudia, let me interject. I think what she's trying to get across, which I comprehend, is that since they're different supervisors regulating each of these employees, there's not going to be a conversation. And so if they all come in an hour early and go home, who's here to run the farm?
That's exactly what we'd need to avoid, right?
That's
So,
what she's referencing.
yes, we
That people
absolutely need
willy-nilly just
coverage.
deciding they're going to change their schedules.
Yes.
And we established a time for this operation. I understand if it's an emergency or
Right.
a one-off, but regularly changing their schedule because that's what they want to do should not be an option. As we wrote the hours of operation for the city.
Well, we can definitely clarify it. There is flexibility in the current language right now. Now, there still needs to have the operational needs of the city still have to be maintained. So if one employee, happened to be from the finance department, one's from the clerk's office, and one's from the building department, there should still be somebody from each of those departments able to handle the tasks, the work assignment, somebody coming to the counter, somebody calling. That would need to be done at that director supervisor level. Does that make sense?
Well, it does in theory, but I think the practice is the problem.
Okay.
Because we have such limited employees that, if all three of them go and say, hey, I'm coming in early tomorrow and I'm leaving early, and nobody talks to the other ones, and then there's nobody here after a certain hour, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I would agree if there's nobody there. I mean, quite honestly, the director for each one of those departments would need to make sure that there's still coverage. So to be able to approve that adjustment, either they need to be there to be able to process and do that stuff, or they need to have another employee that would be there. So.
Well, I think that's something we need to look at, because I don't think people should be regularly just making their schedules. I mean, there's a job with hours of operation. And it's not do as you want to, whenever you want to. These are the hours of operation.
And that's the same thing goes to the union. Same example. Can all the union in this building do the same thing?
Well, currently through the contract, they don't have that ability. So the union, through the negotiations, would need to ask at the negotiation table to have that flexibility.
Right now.
Correct. They wouldn't be able to ask right now. I mean, go ahead, Melissa.
And I will say, if the hours of work are a condition of an employee's employment, and if that is a topic that's governed by the collective bargaining agreement, it's a topic that would be very difficult to change without the city giving some additional consideration, even if they could at all. So if the union has already determined that the hours of work are an important term and condition of employment to be included in a collective bargaining agreement, it's something that, that can be a topic of discussion for negotiation, but it definitely would need to be followed until the union would concede not, to change that.
Well, it's like this window for service up there is open at 8:00. Am I correct?
Mhm.
Okay. So if you've got people regularly coming in from 7 to 8, they're not servicing those people, which is part of their job description. And then the hour at the end of the day where there could be people here, they're not here to service those people, which is part of their job. It's a little confusing to me. That would be like when I worked at the credit union and the doors opened there at 8:00. I said, oh no, I want to come in at 7:00 every day, and I'm just going to screw around for the first hour or whatever it may be. It doesn't make a lot of sense looking at it. I understand the one-offs. I understand certain projects. But as a regular habit, part of your job is servicing the people who come to the window for water bills or whatever with the clerk's office, and you can't do that from 7 to 8 because there's not open. And if they're here after you leave, I don't understand when it's part of the job. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, so let me, I guess, try to address your questions to clarify it. So if a utility billing supervisor has a task of working on getting all of our not smart meters switched over to smart meters and needs maybe 30 hours of uninterrupted time to be doing that, her supervisor might authorize her to come in and work an hour ahead of time to work on that specific task. As you noted, she might also have one of her duties and responsibilities is also to staff the actual windows and answer customer questions, complaints, and issues, doing some billing. We also have 3 or 4 other employees that are also doing that. So if the work of the task was only for that employee to only answer the windows and to hand things from 8 to 4:30, then I could see there being a challenge. But if her supervisor happened to say, well, I want this task done and this is what I want you to be working on, not just a one-off, getting through so that that task can get done, I can see a supervisor say, okay, maybe come in before or stay after to be able to do it. So to flex that time based on what our current personnel manual allows for a director, 1 hour, one way or the other. And that's what council has given to the directors of currently of this community.
Which understandably, in that scenario, I see what you're saying, but this is not going to be something that happens every day or every week. It's going to happen when that happens, which is what I consider a one-off. You have a special project, or you're not going to be doing this every Friday or every day, or, I mean, that's my question to you. It seems to be what she's stating is that we're far afield from the regular hours. I don't know. I'm just going off what I'm hearing. But when we establish those hours, we establish them for a reason. And I understand exceptions and I understand special projects. Trust me, I'm not an idiot. But I also can see that there's seems to be a little area for abuse there. And I don't even understand it. If you take a job that says you work 8 to 4:30, that's your job.
So again, council has the ability to change the personnel to say
Gotcha.
that there is only that. Currently, that is not what is in the text that is there. It sounds like there's going to be some discussion with Melissa here, and I'm sure if there's other examples, Ashley and the department directors, again, a conversation ahead of time so that we're not taking up, over an hour on one particular topic. Happy to have those conversations so that the meetings are as productive as possible.
And Melissa, have you looked at the language? Can you look into that, please? That particular part?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I will definitely work with the city staff so that we can implement the policy changes that this council deems appropriate for those employees that are governed by the handbook. And I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, but the particular part where it says language that they're allowed to change their hours, I just want to protect the rest of the employees and not to have any, I don't want to say a lawsuit, but at least a complaint of feeling discriminated that they're not included in the same policy.
Yes, we will do that. We'll definitely look at the provisions of section 4.2 regarding the workday and any other provisions that dictate the hours worked. And I understand what you're saying about making sure that there's equal treatment across the board. And we'll definitely take into account the policy direction that we're getting from the city council as we look at those provisions in the handbook.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, so no action needed to be taken tonight, first
Correct.
draw vote?
No.
Okay. All right, next item.
Next item is discussion regarding the executive conference room use policy. Staff recently presented City Council with a preliminary draft of the executive conference room use policy. And when putting the draft into a policy format, it was noted that occasionally there could be exceptions. Thus, on page 36 of your packet, lists several foreseeable possible exceptions and explains how an exception to our room use policy would occur. Happy to answer any questions, and if not, my recommendation would be for this to move forward to the August 3rd meeting for councils.
2 questions for you.
Sure, yep.
Why, first, what is the purpose of that? Like, why we need to have that in writing to go in executive room?
Why do we need to have a policy to go into the
Yeah.
executive room?
Yeah,
Well, right now, again, the attorney, my take on it, without having a policy to go into the room, the chairperson of the meeting would be able to just have the meeting, the executive meeting in here. So if it's council's direction to have a policy, then that provides direction to whoever is the mayor position in this particular instance. So
what
if
about
it's,
the incident if we're more than 20?
yes,
And the other one, coming fall, winters, a lot of sickness will happen.
sure. Yep.
Being in that same room, as I see here, that's going to be a problem.
Yep, and those are the first, I think, 2 or 3 examples of an exception. So the first bullet point on page 36 is the attendant is expected to exceed the 20 room occupancy limit. So that would be one of the reasons. That is an exception. One of the other options here is in regards to the heat. I think it's the third or fourth is maybe a health-related concern. So it's the fourth bullet point is a health-related one. Potentially somebody has the flu or a spread of a cold, flu, or other illness. So there might be another reason that people want to be spaced out. And we say, hey, we also, I would note, if somebody is feeling sick, we do have the ability to be remote, and being ill is one of the legally approved options. So hopefully, please, if you're sick, don't come. Just what I tell employees, we have sick leave. Please don't bring that illness here and infect the rest of us. But this is where the mayor position, as the person who is chairing the meeting, would then, so per this policy, would consult with the city administrator or the designee, and the city clerk to determine which exception is appropriate to potentially have an alternate meeting space. So let's say there's a tornado warning and we still wanted to have the conversation. We could meet downstairs in the basement and continue the meeting downstairs in the executive space. Not saying that we necessarily want to do that, but that would be the ability. I can see that the clerk would be very, I'm seeing the look to say she's got to bring these recording devices and all that other stuff. But potentially that could be. We could still potentially take outside of the tornado situation. Again, maybe we're having difficulties with some of the recording equipment in the other room. There's another, so we have some technical issues. So in here, we still might have the capability. So that might be a reason why Chris talks to the mayor and says, Mayor, I'm sorry, the room's, it's not going to work for us because our recording equipment's not handling it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 exceptions, and there could be another one. And then the mayor position would ask the clerk and the city administrator to say, hey, one of these exceptions comes up. And so the recommendation is to use a different room than the executive conference room.
So, Mike, is this normal to have a policy to use executive room? I've never heard such a thing. I mean, it seems like we're having all these ordinance for everything right now.
I believe they do exist, but we had a motion by this council to make this the policy. What the discussion was we are going to use this room, that it was designated for that. So I think it's best to have it in writing. And the discussion that came up was, how can we say we're going to use it every single time, because we might have a situation where we can't use it? So that's why we have the policy drafted in such a way that says it's the policy of the city to use the executive conference room for the purpose for which it was intended, with the ability to be flexible.
And only the mayor and the clerk makes that decision?
Well, it says the mayor with consultation with the administrator and the clerk. I think it's, all three of them getting together. And I think it's going to be certain situations where it's pretty easy. If the temperature in the room is 104, I don't think anybody's going to say, let's go in there. If the attendance is going to be more than 20 people, we can't have more than 20 people in there because that's a violation of the fire code. Again, severe weather and these other examples, I think, are pretty common sense. And I don't think that, the three people that we've designated putting their heads together to try to figure it out are going to abuse that. But again, I don't know any other way to do it, since the mayor technically runs the meeting, but we're not giving the mayor position total authority. It's consultation with these two other people that are important to, day-to-day running of the city, the clerk and the administrator. So I think it's a fair and good policy.
Well, I don't see a need for the policy. I'll be straight out with that one. I think as a council, we voted or decided that we would use it because that was the intention of the room. Obviously, some of these provisions would make it not used over the occupancy limit. If there was severe weather, logistically, if the equipment wasn't running. I think those are kind of common sense situations where it wouldn't be used. But as a general rule, I mean, what's too hot and what's too cold? That's subjective. I'm comfortable when it's cool. I like it cool, but I know some people say it's cold in here and I'm comfortable. I don't see that as, the only way I would be in favor of anything that would change the use of that room was if it was by a council vote. But by and large, I don't see the reason to have this. I just think we have the room to use. We don't need to, we could use some common sense on situations that would preclude the use of that room, as I already said. But again, I would rather, if there was going to be discussion, to not use that room for whatever reason. I don't think anyone, that would be a decision that would be made on by a council vote.
Well, without having a policy, it would be up to the chairperson unless council has a policy that does make it a council vote. So the chairperson is, I'm hearing your point, but the challenge with that, it would be up to currently the mayor then to decide. So I guess he, as the current mayor, would be able to ask council, but as the chairperson running the meeting currently, that would be underneath Robert's Rules of Order, would be what we'd follow, would dictate who sets where the meeting would be.
Well, if the mayor was amenable to it, putting the language into the policy that it was by council vote, that would suffice. That would suffice. That would cover that language, that situation you just pointed out, correct?
It would. And again, that's why we're at a work session, so council can decide. You can give us direction. It will get edited and then bring it back for a future meeting. Again, the mayor can speak for himself, but again, this is why we have work sessions, so that council can provide comments and direction to staff.
I just feel like there's way too many policies in here.
I thought the council asked for the policy last week. Did they not?
I didn't.
I don't remember
Did the council
asking for
give
a
the
policy.
authority to the attorney to come up with a policy?
That is my understanding, that it was, the attorney was requested to draft a policy. So it could be just for tonight's discussion, and council could decide that you don't want to have a policy, but that was my understanding.
You've already paid for the policy to be drafted. If you want to change
I didn't
it,
ask for it.
then
What does it matter?
majority of the council asked for the policy to be created. If you want to change it, go ahead and change it.
I mean, a lot of us here, we never said we don't want to go into the room. We asked to go into the room. It was more like your decision or the clerk, because she didn't have her stuff ready in there. She couldn't do whatever the meeting in there because she didn't have the whatever recording. So we never said we don't want to go there. I said one of the person that said we wanted to go in there. I just don't know why there's so many policies. If you want to do policy, go ahead.
Well, I've been asking about use of that room ever since the building was built. And we just got comfortable staying here, inconveniencing the residents that attend meetings, asking them to leave, which I don't think is right. They should be able to stay right in this room while we leave to the executive session, just like we did in the old city hall. We didn't have an executive session room. We used other office spaces, but we didn't ask the residents to leave and stand out in the lobby. And, I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's right. We put that room in there for a reason, and we should use it as it's intended. And I personally don't believe we need a policy to dictate when we don't use it. I think common sense should come into play when we don't use it. As I already stated, That's my opinion on it.
Well, you're missing two more elected officials, as the mayor says.
Would you rather wait until we have a full council and discuss it?
Again, this was not a staff-driven request. This was council members that, as they've already stated, want to use the room behind us, the executive conference room. So if, it would be at the pleasure of the chairperson of the meeting, currently under Robert's Rules of Order, to do that. Again, if we're trusting, the mayor to have common sense, that, as you're stating, you don't need to have a policy. The mayor can choose to use the room or not. We could have a policy that council votes. You can amend or include or not include what you want in the policy.
Now, this isn't something that's going to be being put into like an ordinance or a
It's not going to be an ordinance. It'll be a policy.
resolution
A policy.
or anything like that. We could say it's a guideline.
It's a guideline,
Instead
a
of
policy.
A guideline.
But you still vote on it, right?
Or-
It's a policy.
I mean, I'll defer to the attorney to explain the difference between a guideline and a policy.
A policy is a pronouncement of what you plan to do and follow. It's a written codification of that. It does not have the force of an ordinance, but it is still a policy. I don't think that if you pass it as a policy that you can just willy-nilly not follow it. Either you adopt it as a policy and follow it, or you don't have a policy. You cannot have a policy. And we can vote every time we go into executive session whether to go into that room or not. That's what the council wants to do.
But like Darrell said, because I was just talking to him, the mayor runs the meetings. The mayor has the choice of staying here or going there.
Well, he also said that we could, before each executive session, vote if we're going in there or not. I mean, it's up to council. Do you want to have a policy? Do you want to have where we vote each time before executive session if we're going to use that room or not?
Didn't you say that would have to be in the policy if we were going to vote each time?
No, I think what Blaine said was if the decision to use it or not is going to be a council vote, you should have a council vote in a
The
policy.
mayor makes that decision if we're
policy.
gonna go in there or not.
Right, that's what I just said. That he said, if we were going to do it that way, the policy would
You should
state.
have a policy that states
Yeah.
that the decision to go
Right.
in is a council vote rather than the mayor, because you're taking away the mayor's authority as the chair of the meeting.
That's why I'm saying, why is the policy? Let them make that choice. If we're staying here, we're going in there. I mean, it's common sense. If there's a technical problem, we're not gonna be able to go in there. Do we need a policy for that? Maybe we need a policy to dress code too. I mean, it's just like all these policies. But I'll go with the majority, whatever. I mean, it's,
Do you want to wait for the other two to be here?
Well, why don't you get a straw vote of where you're at now?
So if we have no policy, Chris will have to have that room ready every week, every Monday night, because the council would vote. Do you want to go in there or do you want to stay out here?
No.
No, what I said was, if you don't have a policy at all, you choose, you,
you.
mayor.
The mayor.
Choose
But
each
she basically
time.
would have to have that room set every Monday night because she doesn't know what it's going to be.
Unless you tell her beforehand that I'm running the meeting, this is where we're going to have it. Unless you have a policy that says that it's a council vote each time.
You're the head.
I mean, here's my thought. If we're going into executive session and there's two people sitting in here and both of them get up and walk out, why would we go in there?
It's your call as the
Make
mayor.
that your decision.
That's pretty much been the practice for the last couple years. They pretty much are expected to walk out, so they do get up and walk out.
We'll do a straw vote. You want to take the policy as written or council makes the choice every,
No.
You make
No.
the decision.
It's-
It's
that's
the
not-
mayor
It's
decision.
either you
And
or
the
the
clerk.
policy.
I have a question.
Oh, boy.
What was the purpose of that room? Why was that room built?
What's it called?
I mean,
Executive.
I mean, we could probably utilize it for something else if we're not gonna
we
use
do
it. for
utilize
executive
utilize
session.
it every
Yes.
week.
Yeah. No, I'm saying, we having a discussion about using that room, was the purpose of that room for executive session?
That was my understanding.
Yes.
And we need to, what we need to vote on is, are we gonna repurpose the room or not? Because it's the mayor's call. I don't think we should diminish his authority or, with a policy. I think it's a common sense issue. I mean, the
Well-
room was used for the purpose for the,
I believe this policy does not diminish anybody's authority. It basically sets forth the council's desire to use that room for which it was intended whenever it's practicable. And if there is a one-off situation, as if, as enumerated herein, there's 6 of them. If there's something else that we've missed, if that comes up, there's a consultation between 3 individuals and a decision is made at that point. I don't think this policy diminishes anything, and I think it's pretty much what the council asked for, other than, the discussion last week was, what if, and then fill in the blank. Do we use that room? And we fill in the blank with the what if. That was what I and Blaine took, was that we want to say it's going to be used for the most part for executive sessions, but never say never, right? Is it going to be, the policy is to always go in there? If there's 40 people going in there, we're going to just cram them in? Again, it is common sense. I don't disagree with it, but either you want the policy or you don't want the policy. If you don't want a policy, that's fine.
Okay, we'll do a straw vote. You have a policy before you. That's what you asked for. It's been given to you. We'll have a straw vote if you want to follow the policy. Scott?
I feel, it's important to have something here, because if not, then what's the use of the room? We should have something to say, hey, we're going to use that room, and here's the exceptions to not using it. I look at it as a guideline. You want to call it a policy, whatever, but I think, yes, we should have something like this to take, so we know, hey, most of the time we're going to be in there, and this is the exception. Granted, they're common sense exceptions, but there should be where, yes, we're going to use that room. That's the main reason it was built for. When we built this, we were talking about building this building. We said, let's have a room for executive sessions so we can leave the council room and go in executive session. And I think that's what most municipalities do. They don't stay in their main area here and have their executive session. They leave the council chambers and go to the executive session room. So yes.
Darrell?
to just get past this subject, yes.
Claudia?
I echo with Daryl.
Hey, I couldn't hear you.
Yes.
Couldn't hear.
We're gonna go in there, in the room.
What did he say, no?
He said, yes, we have to go in there.
Who?
Daryl.
Yeah, but the vote is to whether, to have a policy, not to go in there.
It's
Well, that's
both.
part of
The
it. We
don't need a
That's what
policy
the
to-
policy says.
We don't need a policy to
But
use
that's what
the
the
room.
policy said. Just vote on it. It says that we have to go in there.
It's the preferred location. Doesn't mean you have to.
We're saying we're going in there. Isn't it?
We already heard the mayor's opinion on it. He's fine with having the residents leave this chambers and keeping executive session
But
here.
with passing this policy, we have to go in there. Only if somebody's sick, it says right here, technically, what keeps us here? If somebody's really sick, they should stay home and go virtually, in my opinion.
Exactly. If someone's
Exactly.
sick next to
But if
me out
somebody
here,
has
I'm
a
still-
little cough or cold after a couple of days of being sick, I don't want to be so close to them either. So I want to stay here. I mean, oh, I'm done.
I'm
Yes.
so confused at this point.
No,
said
we're
there's
gonna
too
go
many
in there.
policies.
That's the policy, is to go in there. Am I reading this wrong? I know I have an accent, but I think I read it really good.
I don't know. I have no opinion right now.
No.
Joe?
I'm fine with the policy.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. I got 4 yeses, 1 no, and 1 I don't know.
Okay, I'll vote yes, just to get it over with.
Okay. We implement the policy.
So it would be discussed now to actually vote on the August 3rd meeting. So it won't go on consent because there was 1 no vote. But it will be on the agenda for council, all of council, to make that decision on 8/3.
So just so it's clear, whether or not to use that room would be, as this wording says, would be the mayor or their designee as the chair of the meeting after consulting with city administrator and city clerk. It wouldn't be a council vote to use the room like we've been doing.
Correct. Now,
Correct.
now that could change on next Monday. Council could amend what is the draft guidelines or policy before you actually vote and take action. But as it states right now, that is correct.
I mean, you can
Well-
add that phrase into it.
Couldn't we just
Just
add
make-
it in now?
You
if
could tell us
that's-
now. I
If that's
mean,
what the
it's-
council would
If that's what
like.
council would like.
I'm fine with the mayor and city administrator and the clerk deciding whether or not we can use that room. That's my opinion.
Let's just spell it out. When an exception, one of those exceptions would apply.
Correct. So we have to use it, but with that exception.
Right,
That's
exactly.
why I'm reading it, but correct me if I'm wrong.
And the exception has to be one that's above, not something that's not in these 6 bullet points,
Well,
correct?
Or we could put in there, add for safety purposes.
yeah, it does say including but not limited to, and then it lists out the 6 bullet points. So there could be something that, again, there could be a safe, I mean, there's things that we don't have the magic 8 ball that can say every single.
So it could be
So it's-
anything potentially and it could revert to the situation we've already been in for 2 years where we stay out here most of the time because someone might have a situation or a reason to not go in there.
Well, to me, the very beginning basically states and I'll just read the first few sentences. It says effective, if this passed, effective August 3rd of 2026 until amended, modified, or repealed, the City of Crest Hills Executive Conference Room shall be the preferred location for the City Council executive session meetings. Again, there are some common sense things that talk about the room has the maximum capacity of 20 people as established by the applicable fire codes, and the executive session meetings should generally be held in this room whenever it is practical and feasible to do so. And then it lists out, here are some exceptions. So exceptions to the executive room for confidential executive sessions may be when circumstances warrant an alternative meeting location, including but not limited to, and then it lists out the 6 bullet points. So I do think most of those are practical things. Again, that's where typically when we're preparing for a meeting, the clerk, if she knows there's equipment failure, that might be one, or if she knows a topic that there's 22 people, the room can only hold 20, she's going to come to the mayor or come to me and say, hey, there's 22 people, we need to have an exception for tonight's meeting because there's too many people that are going to be here. Now, if the room is 110 or 104, I think most of us would say that's probably a little too hot, and if the temperature is at 74 in here, be okay. Again, I agree using the term uncomfortable, hot or cold. I don't know everybody's preference once or another, but basically to me, once you're either sweating or you're freezing, hopefully we kind of know, but I get it that there could be some variance. The health related concerns exist where, again, close proximity of attendees might potentially spread a cold, the flu, or other communicable illness. Again, I think all of us don't want somebody else to get sick. So hopefully, again, if you're sick, you won't be in attendance. Severe weather. So again, we might have various locations. So we might want to meet in a safer location. Basements is one of the examples listed. And then finally, there could be accessibility, operational, logistics, or other practical considerations that make another meeting location more appropriate. So again, through this policy, the majority of the time would be in the executive conference room. However, there could be some exceptions. Again, we might not have an exception for years, but they're in the guidelines.
Fair enough. He's not answering.
Got your vote.
I'm fine. It's just, Mark asked if there wanted to be a change. Joe commented. So I just want to make sure I have the final direction to to place it as is. You guys could change it on next Monday. But as of right now, with the straw vote being, I guess, 5-1, it would be under a discussion item for council to talk about on 8-3. If that's the direction, happy to follow it.
That's the direction.
All right. Next item is the reactivation of a meter hardship program. So last year, council, I'll just provide a little background history. So we still had, when I started, over 70 meters that were still not changed out from about 5 years ago when we had the non-smart meters. So council first started with a carrot approach and had about 5 or 6 months, I think it was about 5 months, of offering a meter hardship program. We have now gotten our numbers from that 70 down to about 30, so we've improved it dramatically. We also instituted a stick component, which is the fee for our staff to go out and manually read those non-smart meters. We have had a resident who is on a fixed income request basically the previous hardship program. However, it has since expired. So staff feels, since there's down to now 30, if we could get more people to actually go with the smart meters, it would be advantageous. Both would save our staff, even though we're getting the minimal fee to go out there, that if we have more meters being smart, the better for staff. And again, these fixed income residents, I know this one particular did find a vendor that would be able to fix her issue for the $300, which was in the previous program. If she would have taken advantage of it before the end of December of 2025, she would have already been included. So for tonight's discussion, and hopefully approval, just we'd reactivate the meter hardship program. And my recommendation is for it to go to the end of 2027, which we would hopefully then pick up as many as we could. Again, we still have the stick, the fee component there. This would just allow us to allow some residents to take advantage now of the carrot side.
Questions from council? We'll do a straw vote to adopt the policy as presented. Joe?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Claudia?
Yes.
Darrell?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
All right, on consent agenda for next Monday night. Next one.
All right, the next item is item number 4. That is the draft confidentiality policy for elected and appointed officials. Attorney Stiff has drafted from the preliminary draft text and has now drafted a policy document for discussion. There are now 8 items, and I'm not sure if council would only like to talk about specific ones or if you'd like Attorney Stiff to go through each of the items. I did note in my memo that he did remove, I think it was 2 items, as he didn't feel that those pertain to the confidentiality component. And Attorney Stiff is here to answer questions and to either go through specific ones or through all 8.
Another policy.
Another policy.
Basically, I think I took the best practices recommendations and kind of just massaged the language into more of a policy. The only one that's changed dramatically was the one that got the most discussion last time, which was the first one, which is the cell phone usage. I've watered the language down, which is what Blaine suggested that we do. So it is, I guess, self-explanatory and somewhat watered down. And the rest of the best practices have just been sort of massaged into more of a policy format as opposed to this is a recommendation. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but it's in essence the same document from last week with, again, that first cell phone usage component significantly
I want to make this
changed.
quickly, but I have 2 questions for
Sure.
you. I'll make them really quickly. One is, any council make notes? You know how you can take notes on your phone right now, which it's almost like translating, like recording. Can that possible?
Well, if you use your phone or your tablet, I think that becomes a public record.
I understand, but you can still do it.
Well, again, you can do it. It's just a public record.
Okay.
I mean, I would prefer, as we discussed last week, I think that if you're going to make notes, you probably should make them on your
Paper.
city issue tablet rather than your phone.
Okay.
That way I don't have to,
The
if we
second
get
thing
a
is,
FOIA, have to chase you and ask you for those off your phone.
oh, if you have to, you have to. I think we're all here have to be responsible for what we do, and there's consequences for everything. But you cannot record anything, correct?
Well, the
Should add
recording
something like
is
that,
for,
You're not recording,
the recording is for executive session. That's the prohibition on recording. Because we do have an official recording of the executive session. So you can record as anybody can record, the open meetings. So
Because
this
it's a public
recommendation is
meeting.
just with
oh,
respect
so
to,
anyone can record the public meeting, it's not illegal.
it is not illegal.
Oh, okay. Okay. The other thing is this says for the elected official and appointee officials. What about city staff and department heads and employees?
I think I referenced in this policy, this is mainly the elected officials and the appointed officers, but I reference in there that some of the trainings and staff that do treat confidential or handle confidential information would be subject to the annual trainings as well and the same confidentiality as the council.
So you don't think?
What I don't know,
add
and that was a question for Ashley, I think, is whether there should be a similar
Policy.
addition to the employee handbook so they dovetail together. Since this one is primarily directed to the elected officials and appointed officers, there are references to other trainings for staff, but I think that probably needs to also be in the policy manual.
Because an open meeting act, even city administrator phone can be FOIA or any department head.
Not mine, but.
Not you, but like Ashley or, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So we should add everybody, my opinion, but I'm just one.
I don't, I don't know. I have a couple of things. I'm, just picking at a couple, but I know any training that I have to do, I don't know, it doesn't say whether to stay current with things or not, but training should be paid because that's in addition to my duties as an elected official. I'm not sure this maintenance of confidentiality. We all took an oath of office, and I think the oath of office pretty much covers that. But we kind of skip a little bit of what may be considered a person guilty of culpable omission of duty. There are some things that are left out in here that I've seen, but I've never seen anything about court enforcement. This is new language to me. I've seen things about censorship, but not court enforcement. But those two things really just stick out. It's just to me a little bit over the top. I mean, I've never had to succumb to anything like this before, and I've dealt with a lot of very confidential things that probably are far greater than anything I would encounter here. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around the purpose and why would I subject myself to this? Because I've been entrusted with confidential information far greater than anything I'll get here, and it's still confidential.
Anybody else? Any other ones you need to go through, Mike?
No, again, I think they were based off the discussion last week of what was in the best practices. So the only thing I've taken out are the ones for the ability of the city to bind, or an individual person to bind the city financially, and
To direct.
the discussion we had on council members directing staff to actually do something. There was that paragraph. I think that belongs in something other than a confidentiality policy. So that's not in this one. So those two have been removed, and then the cell phone usage has been obviously altered and somewhat watered down.
Okay. You have the draft policy for elected and appointed officials. We will do a straw vote for approval for consent agenda. Claudia?
Yes.
This is just applicable to elected officials.
And appointed officers.
This policy shall be applicable to elected officials. First sentence.
Read the cell phone usage.
Well, I'm talking about the whole policy. The first sentence above cell phone usage. So that would seem to only.
We can add and appointed officers, which is consistent with the rest of them.
Claudia, you're yes?
Yeah, as long I'm allowed to keep my phone, and if anyone wants a FOIA, go ahead.
Ralph?
No.
Scott?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Joe?
Yes.
Okay. This will be not on agenda, not on consent for next week.
All right, the fifth item that I have is in regards to the naming of the property that's in between City Hall and the library, commonly referred to as the plaza or the park. As staff is continuing to apply for various grants, there is a grant that we can apply for that's about up to $600,000. We need to have the name for the property. We also will be seeking letters of support for us to actually get the grants. So again, we need to have a name. Our community and economic development director, Dan Ritter, had come up with a few suggestions, but the most common was actually calling that parcel the Crest Hill Commons, as is listed in your packet. Again, to me, I'm not picking this name over that name. It's just as we apply for grants, I need to have a name on the application. I need to go after letters of support so we can go get some money. And that first grant is due at the end of August, so time is of the essence to get the letters of support. And so having a name would be helpful. This doesn't mean in the future the city could not change the name to say that they want it to be something else. But as I talk with our state reps and senators and the two fire districts and the two school districts and our township and others, the park district and the library and others, and if you guys have others that you think would write letters of support, that would be great. Please let me know. We just need a name. So that's where we're at.
Well, Dan, did you came up with some ideas since you're,
Yeah, we were just trying to find something that works, so I was trying to brainstorm a few ideas myself to just send out. This was one of them, Crest Hill Commons or just City Center Plaza. So we were trying to come up with something, and like Blaine said, we're trying to, at least at this stage, it doesn't have to be forever. We're not making the signs tomorrow, but we want to stay consistent in our phrasing as well as with your phrasing. The only thing I kind of, as I was trying to think of these names, is just personally, I think we should maybe try and avoid park.
Yeah.
That's something I've had to try and do. Plaza, green, commons,
I like the
something that's a
common.
little more inclusive of, we're trying to make a central public space for the community
Yeah.
to gather. So park, to me, makes me think more of a playground, just kind of
Mhm.
something you go to for the day. Also, with a park district, maybe naming it different is a benefit that kind of differentiates it. And the park district may even name their playground, may have a sub name for their playground or something like that. We might have a sub name for the band shell. You might have separate names for those things. So I was trying to find something. Commons is a common one. And I know New Lenox kind of used that. It's very similar to what we're trying to do here, which is put kind of services, businesses around a kind of
Yeah.
a common space. So this was one that it was really kind of me, Ron, and Blaine,
about-
maybe trying to
Then
come up
what
with
about to me?
something that was,
Merging the two, you said Crest Hill Plaza.
it's City Center Plaza, Crest Hill Plaza. Yeah, and I think right now we don't want to be, staff doesn't need to name this, so we just want.
No, I
some-
know, but city center, that's kind of generic. That's why I suggest using the city name. I mean.
Crest
cities-
Hill Commons.
Well, but Crest Hill
could work.
Common, it sounds more like uppity, more,
Sounds more what?
sounds more like uppity, more common, something different. Everybody uses the word plaza, the word park. And I think common is kind of like taking it to the next level, but I'm only one vote, so.
I do think the commons gives us as much flexibility because, again, as Dan was noting, a certain area might be considered the plaza. A certain area might become the pocket park, which is the playground. A certain area might become this or that. So there could be other naming rights eventually when we go after things. So I think, again, we want to brand ourselves. So it's the name of our city, Crest Hill, and then commons. So I think, again, there wasn't a lot of thought put into this because we're under the clock. And we wanted to get this on this agenda and get your guys' thoughts. Hopefully, we can go get $500,000, $600,000 initially with this grant. But we need letters of support. That's a big portion of this. And so we need a name.
It sounds good.
I'm fine with it for
Crest Hill
the,
Commons sounds good. It's got a ring to it.
good for,
I can't come up with something better. Does anybody else have something better?
I like common.
And again, if there's, this isn't set in stone forever. So
Right.
if we have some magic thing that pops up and everyone wants to rally behind it, we can change it, but we want our applications, our verbiage
Yeah.
to stay consistent. So
Originally, I was thinking about having the word park in there, but that's right. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
not a park. We're not a park district here and it's going to be used for different things. So I agree
it's
with
not that it couldn't be. That was just at least
Right.
one thing as I was trying to name this, I was trying to avoid. So.
Okay, the recommendation is Crest Hill Commons. It can be changed later at a later date. This is just basically to trying to get some grants. Scott,
Yeah, that's fine.
Darrell,
Yes.
Claudia, Tina,
Sure.
Mark,
yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Okay. Consent agenda item next week.
Do we even need that to go to?
Anything else, Blaine?
That is it. We do have items for economic development and the one for public works. Unfortunately, our public works director, the storm did impact him personally, so in his household. So I'll be pinch hitting for that one. But Dan's here, and I don't want to hold up other staff members. So I would suggest continuing on. I just wanted to let everybody know.
All right, we'll go to Dan then next.
Yeah, I just have one item. It's direction on the zoning ordinance use amendment for data centers. I believe Alderman Sapiti brought this up at a meeting in July. And I think it was a good idea to just have this addressed. It's not clear in our code. Obviously, we didn't think of data centers even in 2013, 2018, whenever we drafted that. And instead of sitting there kind of going, okay, where does this fit in and what would the process be? I think under no circumstances would have just been permitted. If any data center came before we made a change, it would at a minimum be going through a special use process, if not some kind of text amendment. or rezoning. But I think this kind of helps us go, okay, let's talk about it. Let's try and get some direction from council. I wrote a little bit about it in here, but to be honest with you, you could do all the research in the world and you start searching through stuff and you'll get completely conflicting views of every aspect of this. So noise, the costs and benefits to the local community, the costs and benefits overall. One thing kind of as I'm looking at this for Crest Hill is that, just to be quite honest, we don't have a really good property for this. We're not a community on the fringe where they can do this into some cornfields. Most of the space and available land we have would be either on our significant commercial corridors or up against residential, which I just do not think, even if it was regular industrial, we'd want it there, let alone something like this. So just to kind of summarize, was staff's recommendations basically to direct us to define a data center and then prohibit it in our zoning districts. That doesn't mean forever. If something changes, if we get new information, if the technology changes and maybe they're doing smaller things, maybe we can come back and kind of revisit this. But it's really tough to see a good location even in the city as it exists today. And again, with all the conflicting information, I'm sure we could go back and forth for another hour on our data center is good or are they bad. But I don't know if this is really needs to be a debate here, just because of the lack of available space. And again, this discussion, we haven't even had an inquiry. I've had a couple like brokers ask generally, do we allow them or not? But there's never been a proposal here and there's never been any specific interest in it. My guess is there's going to continue to not be, but this will kind of, if we define it and we make it very clear it's prohibited, that will give us some flexibility then to, or not flexibility, it'll give us direction, to give very clear direction if somebody does ask the question. So that is all I have.
City attorney, can I ask you a question about this?
Yes.
Are we legally, I just, seems to me, I remember at one point years ago, there was something we were doing and we said we couldn't eliminate it from all the things we had, we could make it a special use. Are we legally allowed to do this?
I've not looked into that issue, but I don't think that there is a prohibition, even as a non-home rule, from putting zoning in your code that prohibits a certain use.
Yeah, there are certain protected uses. So like adult uses are one of those that have just, sometimes you feel like you want to prohibit it everywhere and you can't. So there are certain kind of protected uses that you have to allow some ability for them to go somewhere. I'm also not aware of this being anything that's
I'm
protected.
just checking because I remember it with that other issue.
Now the state is considering regulating this at a state level, and I don't know what that means, but at this point, I'm not aware of anything that would say you can't.
And before Dan brings this back to you, I'll do a quick check to make sure.
And we'd be looping this in with some other use changes as well in our use chart from things we've discussed before. So we'll have our attorney look at all of those and make sure it's good.
Any other questions or comments?
Data centers use a tremendous amount of water, don't they, Dan?
Yes.
Some of them do.
It depends. Some of them recirculate the water and then they use a bunch of electricity.
Yeah.
Some of them use a lot of water, but not a lot of electricity.
I haven't, that's just my understanding. I didn't, I would almost think the Lake Michigan water would cause that to be a reason we didn't have a data center, but anyway.
During the Grand Prairie discussions, that topic did come up since other communities, not Crest Hill, but Manuka has just approved a data center. And the question was, can they use well water since it's doesn't have to be potable water rather than using the Lake Michigan water that is allocated under the IDNR. So as it turned out for Manuka, the data center had to go with electric cooling. So it became a non-issue.
And that's what most of them do now. But again, it depends. Like, if you search it, you get like a Center for Science Advancement that says, this is amazing and we need to do it and we need to keep up with China. Then you have the Sierra Clubs, the next one, and it says this is awful and it's terrible. And it depends. They have different ways to do it. Most of them don't use a ton of water anymore, and they use more electricity. But that also is a whole nother issue with rates and power and needing to build more plants and us closing down plants. So I have gone deep into it, but I will tell you, I think for Crest Hill, it's best to just, at this point, prohibit them. And again, if something changes, we can always revisit the way we regulate uses here.
Okay, you have a recommendation. We'll do a straw vote to direct staff to conduct any additional necessary research and prepare draft amendments to the zoning ordinance defining data centers and prohibiting their use in all zoning districts for consideration at a future plan commission public hearing. Joe?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes, thank you, Dan, for following up on my request.
Pina?
Yes. Yes.
Rel?
I mean, that, us prohibiting them, that's not gonna really affect how they impact the residents, so, but go ahead, yeah.
Scott?
Yes.
Okay. On consent for next Monday.
That'll come back separately, not on consent, because we'll be taking that as a use change, and it's got to go through plan commission since it's part of the zoning code in a public hearing. But it will be back before you at some point in the next couple months.
All right. Anything else, Dan?
I don't have anything else. I'll say the other discussion that I know is lingering that I was directed to do was tarped vehicles. And so I'm going to be working with Mike on that. I've at least thought of drafting some stuff and getting that together. So we'll be back before you. That's still on our list and we're still working on it.
Okay. Thanks. All right, we have no agenda items under engineering or police department tonight, so we'll move on to Public Works for the update on the Jasmine Ditch Cleanup Project. Blaine, you're handling that one?
I am. Again, just to note, Gary had some storm-related issues at his house, and his neighbors, and they were without power. So he apologizes, but I told him deal with his family and his home situation. So in our packet on page 84 is Gary's memo to council. My understanding from a quick conversation with him today that he has received at least 2 proposals to address, and then Gary worked with Ron on the map, which is on page 49. So it highlights the specific area. So the work would be completed, my understanding is in 2 stages. So that some work could be done sooner, and then when they have more staff can complete the second portion. And as Gary's memo notes, he's anticipating that the work would for this phase 1 would cost less than the city administrator's authority at $20,000. So Gary's the one that's been receiving the proposals and talking with those vendors. So tonight there's no formal action, but wanted to provide an update. And again, we're looking to move forward as soon as possible. It would be helpful for some guidance or direction. So since the numbers might come in under the 20,000, if council is okay giving me the guidance and direction as soon as we have those, I would be able to give Gary the authority to move forward. And since it is within the authority of the city manager position, Gary's authority is not at that level. Again, this is running simultaneously to what Mike Stiff is doing on the legal side for us to actually get the property, in addition to what our city engineer, Ron Wiederman, is doing to investigate the overall piping issues and trying to rectify that portion. This would clean out the area. This is taking out the plant material and that sort of stuff. This isn't scooping up the stones and all that stuff. This is the initial phase one is to remove the plant material. Happy to answer questions.
I have two questions, Blaine. So the two proposals we've already received, are those both under $20,000?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And then would the cleanup of the vegetation encompass the area on this map that is green?
It does.
So all the way from Gaylord to the west to that red dotted line that says outfall,
Yes.
to that last blue area?
Yeah, so those blue areas are currently underneath the private.
Yeah, those are yards, people,
Yeah.
residents' yards.
So,
right?
so we won't be going into the private yards, but again, what's noted on that map, Ron notes in the green areas, limits the ownership the city is working to acquire. So the limits of maintenance of work is being proposed. Again, we're hoping to either through condemnation, going to the courts to actually have the ability to own this, which then it would be under our control and we would have greater control. We will have to work with, I think, two different residents. I think there was little maybe stars where maybe one or two for us to get the equipment out there. We'll have to have temporary easements to allow the heavier equipment to get out there with a few residents. My understanding is Ron has talked with those residents, as long as it's not wet ground like it is now, that the equipment would create ruts. They're okay with us getting in there to do that. Again, the lower legal risk, and I'm sure Attorney Stiff will talk about this, is only really if somebody gets injured. So one of these firms, we're going to want to make sure that we have all the proper insurances because we are technically not the owners of this property. However, it's nuisance. The property where the drainage is going is basically in all essence been abandoned, and we would be deeming it basically a health and safety risk. So if we had to go to court, it's a lower risk. Again, as Mike normally tells me, the belts and suspenders approach would be to wait until we actually are the owners. However, the city, in my understanding in the past, has at least twice gone in and done this underneath that health and safety provision. It's been a number of years, and I know we've had some flooding issues. So I do feel that this, sooner than later, and I know there have been residents in the past that have also asked for that. So council could give me guidance, and since both of the two proposals that we've received thus far are both underneath the 20,000, if council gives me direction, I'll work with Gary tomorrow to have him pick one of those two firms after getting references and then moving forward.
Okay, because I was sorry,
Okay.
I wasn't quite done yet on that vegetation removal. There are some pretty good sized trees that have grown in there. That includes them to be removed also.
I'm not the best because I haven't seen the actual proposals, but my understanding is vegetation, and so I would classify that as vegetation. My understanding is one of the two firms is one that has done this in the past, and I guess there were sizable trees that maybe were a couple diameters, couple inches
There's
into.
one that's about a diameter like a bit. It's a willow.
Oh, okay.
There's like a group of them.
And there's
I
a
look
bunch
at
of
it,
semaller
yeah,
ones,
yeah.
but there's one that's quite significant.
I looked
But
at
it's
it
coming
today.
right out of the middle of the ditch.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can follow up. Hopefully Gary will be here tomorrow, but I'm sure if they clean everything minus those few, that could be arranged with a service if they don't have the appropriate equipment.
Okay, go ahead, Drew.
My question, you said this is basically some abandoned property, and couldn't the city just enact the powers of eminent domain instead of trying to purchase this?
That's what we're talking about, the legal process.
That's what we're trying to do, is actually condemn it, go through the court system to say that it's in essence been abandoned. We wouldn't necessarily, if there's nobody to pay, let's just say $1 or $2, there's nobody to pay. Then, Mike would go to court and say to the judge, We've tried to reach the defunct property owners. This is causing a problem. It has caused problems year after year. We have flooding issues, and it appears that it would only get worse. There's creatures, wildlife, and other things that are in here. We need it to be fully functional and make our best case. So we're not trying to purchase property. We're just trying to take it as a government.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else, council? Sue, you've been sitting here patiently. Any comments? To the podium, please. To the podium, please.
Oh. Said it flooded again today pretty bad, and now the flooding is getting worse, and I have 2 big pine trees. Now the flooding is coming underneath those trees and coming closer to my home. And it's going through my fence, and it went all the way to Sweetbriar again today. So it continues to get worse and worse. It's been 7 months since I was here last time, and I don't understand why it's taken 7 months to take control of this property and clean it up. And are the boulders going to be removed, or are they going to be left there?
Underneath this first phase, it is just, so we also have an engineer who's on their second phase of trying to solve the flow and the rate and the quantity issues. So this is, I guess, attacking this from various issues. We have the legal to try to get the property. We have the engineering to try to solve the long-term issues. And now we have the cleanup. So all of those things have been ongoing. And this is where we're at this point. And I know Mike can speak to trying to reach the previous owners of, I guess, or officers of the firm that were owners of the property that have since gone bankrupt. And then through the court filings and whatnot, and the engineers, we've had several council meetings where our engineers provided an update from Christopher Burke's comments in regards to the flow and the size and some of the drainage. They've recommended and council has approved $44,000 to do that second phase at this point. And right now, there has been basically a request or conversation in regards to cleaning out the overall ditch area, and so that's the third prong of this. So
the boulders will be removed.
Again, we'll know with based on the recommendations of the engineers, but this first phase, which we can only see right now, would be the vegetation. It does seem likely that the rocks, boulders, and other things may have allowed the silt to actually solidify in and actually cause and maybe even worsen the problem. However, we need the engineers to actually tell us.
I know I've been there since 1990, and those boulders were never there before until you guys put them in there 10, 15 years ago. That's when all the vegetation grew up over them. That created the problem. So if you go in there and you clean up all this vegetation and you do not remove those boulders, we're going to be looking at this in another 10, 15 years for flooding again.
Yeah,
I probably will not be at that residence.
Yeah.
But I mean, today's flooding, I have video of it if you want to see it. And then there's dead animals in my front yard. Have you ever smelt a dead raccoon?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a live body in your front yard dead. And then I'm expected to clean that up after the falcons get a hold of them. It's not fun. Baby bunnies. When I walked over there a couple months ago when it was raining like crazy, I took an umbrella. Raccoons were fighting, trying to get out of the water from the other side. It was crazy.
Yep, it's unfortunate. Again, staff, along with our council, have taken a proactive approach to go through, these 3 steps instead of waiting for the legal to then go through and go. This is for government work, quite honestly, a pretty quick pace. I've been in other communities where we would have waited for the legal and not.
But it's been flooding for 2 years like this.
Yeah, I mean, from the initial engineering component, it's basically from the way that the flooding's coming through. It's not necessarily this. There's several issues to this problem. So addressing it from 3 different angles, potentially addressing the pipe issue, addressing the vegetation, looking at the underlining. Pardon me?
What's wrong with the pipe? This is the first I'm hearing.
Yeah, so with the pipes, there are some area where the backflow is actually potentially causing it not to go through. So I can have our engineer reach out to you to explain the pipe issues, along with, I can make sure for the meeting that when the engineers are talking about this again, that's that second phase, the $44,000 that you can have access to the report, and then again, you can watch the meeting or come.
And
know,
will
come
there
to a
be a
council meeting.
drainage plan? Because from what I'm hearing, there has never been a drainage plan. I don't know if that's true or not, but.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, the city is currently not the owner of the property, so again, it would not be the city that has the drainage plan. Once we hopefully get ownership, those are some of the things with a ditch or culverts and those sort of things that we would then.
When you take ownership of it, you will have a drainage plan.
Well, we will have the engineers, and we'll be working with our neighboring community, Joliet, as the outflow goes through.
Right.
And it's not just this specific area. There are 2 or 3 other homeowners associated. I mean, so the whole area actually has to have an overall comprehensive
And
plan.
Joliet's planning on building houses where it all.
My understanding is we've made them aware that that's the natural outflow of where this drainage goes.
Okay.
Their engineers in contact with our engineers on that and the developer.
Okay. My only thing is those boulders have to go. That's what created this issue.
Again, we're waiting for the engineers to give us direction on that, but I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with you. We've asked the engineers to look into that overall issue.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you have your direction for tomorrow.
Well, so what would be helpful is to, I guess, have, if council's going to give me the guidance to move forward. So I guess a straw poll to say that you're okay with me utilizing the city administrator's authority, working with the public works director to move forward with one of those 2 proposals.
All right, we'll do a straw vote. Tina?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Earl?
Yes.
Claudia?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay. Finance, we have no agenda items. Public comment, anyone like to address city council, please step to the podium, state your name for the record, address, stop show.
Linda Dyke, Kelly Avenue. As a taxpayer, I have a right to attend a public meeting. But during executive session, I'm asked to go out normally in the hallway. I don't have a problem with that. But people are complaining about going in that room being hot or being cold. That is freezing out there in the wintertime. So as I'm reading here, I can file a complaint with the Attorney General. And I can also civilly ask to be put in an area like your wife was for the executive session. She wasn't asked to sit out there. She got to go in your office. So now that these coverings are on the window, it's like a bird cage in here. So I'm going to be put out there in that bird cage. So if an active shooter comes in, I'm the one that's going to say, hey, you can't go in there. City council's in there. Okay? I'm not armed. I don't have anything to defend myself, but I'm put out in an open hallway. So my request is, since you're making a policy, I want a fireplace and a coffee pot and a security guard if I have to sit out there, because that's my right. And if, you have a problem with that, maybe I can go in your office. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, Mike, is there a need for an executive session?
No.
Okay, with no further business before us, the meeting is adjourned at 9:24 PM.